Hey guys, tonight we step into a palace bedroom that is not your own, though the plush carpets and golden inlays might trick you for a second. You're sprawled out in the chamber of a sultan who has every jewel, every silken curtain, every bronze lantern flickering with perfumed oil. But despite all that luxury, he can't sleep. His eyelids keep fluttering open like a broken shutter in a midnight wind. He tosses, he turns, and though the bed is carved from cedar and inlaid with mother of pearl, he might as well be lying on a bed of pebbles. Something is pressing on him tonight, something heavy, though you can't see it. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, while you're here, drop a quick comment with your location and the local time you're listening. It's strangely comforting to know this story weaves across time zones and kitchen clocks. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The Sultan stares up at the ceiling, its painted stars and crescent moons, and he swears one of them just moved. You've probably stared at your bedroom ceiling before and convinced yourself a crack is a spider. Same energy here, except, in his case, the stars are beginning to tilt and the painted moon is glowing. You probably won't survive this, by the way. Don't worry, it's a dream. Probably. The first moon above his bed lengthens, shifting from the lacquered ceiling into the open sky itself, until the chamber dissolves around him. The marble columns peel away like mist. He blinks, and suddenly he's no longer lying in bed but standing barefoot on warm stone. A faint breeze smells like jasmine, cardamom, and maybe, just maybe, burnt bread from the kitchens. That's the danger of living in palaces. Someone always leaves a flatbread too long on the griddle. As he breathes in, the heaviness in his chest deepens. His pulse is loud in his ears. He wonders if this is a vision from Allah, or perhaps the mischievous work of a jinn. Historians still argue whether belief in jinn during the Abbasid period reflected lingering pre-Islamic folklore or evolved religious interpretation. Either way, the Sultan is certain something unseen is watching him. A hush falls over this dream place. His footsteps echo against nothing, as though the world has been stripped bare and left just for him. It reminds you of standing in a stadium long after a concert, everything emptied out, sound still hanging in the rafters. That strange, too big silence. He looks up, and the moon itself shimmers, its shape multiplying. Not one, but 7 faint discs shimmer into being above him. The first is silver, pale and clear, and the rest lurk dimly behind, like coins stacked against the night. 7 moons, an unlucky number for a man already deprived of rest. You can feel his unease settle in your own shoulders, a weight like carrying a basket you didn't sign up for. He thinks about the burden of ruling, deciding taxes, balancing alliances, keeping rivals from slipping poison into the sherbet. Fun fact, poison paranoia was practically an occupational hazard for rulers in medieval courts. Royal testers had the worst job description: sample the Sultan's food, then try not to die. The Sultan wonders if perhaps he is suffering from that courtly paranoia now, that the moon itself has turned conspirator. He hears whispers, like silk drawn across marble, but no figures appear. Maybe it's memory itself whispering, executions ordered, petitions denied, alliances broken. Even a sultan can't silence the echo of conscience. The first moon brightens further. It gleams silver like polished mirrors, and the Sultan sees his reflection within it, not as a mighty ruler, but as a weary man, alone and shrinking. His beard is streaked with more white than he remembered. His crown looks too heavy, sagging his neck. This mirror moon is brutally honest, a moon that insists you may rule nations, but you can't stop time from nudging you toward dust. The Sultan flinches. He recalls tales of Alexander the Great, how legends claimed he sought out the fountain of youth and failed. Historians still argue whether Alexander genuinely believed in those myths, or if later storytellers embroidered his adventures with magical quests. Either way, the Sultan sees his own futility mirrored here. You can build walls, raise armies, but you can't bribe the clock. As he stares, he notices other oddities in this silver moon. Strange figures drift across its surface, like court jesters tumbling. One jester bends into a bow, exaggerated, his hat dangling. Another tosses a loaf of bread into the air like a juggler. The Sultan chuckles once, bitterly, because he remembers his own jester telling him that one day even the moon will laugh at him. And here we are. Moon's got jokes. The silver moon pulses once, like a heartbeat. The sound thumps through his chest, echoing louder than any drum. His palace, his chamber, his sleepless night. They feel like memories slipping away, and in their place, the moons pull him forward. The first moon beckons him deeper into this dream, promising revelations but also clawing dread. The Sultan steadies himself. You can almost hear him muttering a prayer beneath his breath, soft and uncertain. He's not sure whether he should fear this vision or embrace it. He recalls how astronomers of his court once debated the influence of the moon on human moods. Some argued that lunacy, that lovely word, was no accident. Maybe he's not dreaming at all. Maybe he's becoming one of those moon-mad rulers the chroniclers love to gossip about. The moon above flickers once more, and the whispers stop. He's left staring at the first silver disk, wide and luminous, casting its glow across his path. The Sultan takes a hesitant step forward into that pale light, and just like that, the dream tightens its grip. The silver glow doesn't fade, it thickens, like mist settling over your skin. The Sultan feels his feet sink into cool sand that wasn't there a heartbeat ago. The warm stone floor beneath him has vanished, traded for dunes rippling like silk under moonlight. Above, the first glowing moon hovers larger, brighter, as if it intends to lean down and whisper directly into his ear. He squints. Within that silver orb he sees movement, like threads twisting into shape. At first, it looks like smoke. Then, it sharpens into an image, a throne perched on a cliff, balancing precariously as though the next breeze will topple it. On the throne sits a figure resembling himself, crown slipping, robes wrinkled, eyes hollow. The Sultan feels his jaw tighten. He recognizes fragility when he sees it. Power, after all, is always on loan. You borrow authority from soldiers, from scribes, from the people who let you sit high, as long as your decisions don't crush them. The Sultan once boasted that his rule was as solid as the earth, but now the moon shows him that his throne teeters like a clay pot on a market stall. One clumsy elbow and crash. Historians still argue whether the tales of sultans losing their thrones overnight were exaggerated by court poets, or actually common in volatile dynasties. But either way, the Sultan knows too many examples. One ruler poisoned by sherbet, another deposed by his own brother, and yet another who simply vanished on a hunting trip, never to be found. Honestly, medieval politics had all the stability of a card tower in a sandstorm. The sand shifts beneath his toes. He steadies himself, hearing the crunch, grains slipping, grains whispering. Funny thing about sand, it looks eternal, endless desert stretching out, but each grain is ancient, older than empires, and it still moves, reshaping under the slightest breath. That's power for you, heavy to hold, light to lose. The silver moon pulses, and the image changes. Now he sees people lined up, peasants carrying baskets of dates, women with jars of water balanced on their heads, children tugging at their mothers' sleeves. They look up at him, not with reverence, but expectation. Their faces are a mirror too, silently saying, "You exist because we carry you." A memory stirs. The Sultan once ordered tax relief after a drought. It wasn't generosity exactly, more like damage control. He still remembers the flood of gratitude, the way villagers pressed his hand, the way old men blessed him with cracked voices. He had felt taller that day, lighter. But then he recalls raising those same taxes the following year to fund his summer palace. Oops! The people didn't bless him then. They muttered. He pretended not to hear. The silver moon seems to know this, flashing brighter. For a second, he swears the moon itself smirks. Yes, the moon is judging him now. You'd think heavenly bodies would have better hobbies. A gust of wind sweeps the dunes, rattling the Sultan's robes. Out of the shifting sand rises a shape, a pillar of glass, catching moonlight in sharp angles. Inside, frozen mid-motion, is another figure, an old astronomer with ink-stained hands, pointing upward, mouth half open as though in lecture. The Sultan recognizes him. He had dismissed this scholar years ago for rambling too much about the fragility of kingdoms. Stars endure, the old man had said, but thrones do not. At the time, the Sultan laughed and told him to write fewer poems. Now here he is, trapped in moonlight like an inconvenient truth preserved in crystal. You've probably had that moment where advice you ignored years ago comes back to bite you. Like when your mum warned you not to microwave aluminum foil and you thought, psh, what could go wrong? Then, sparks, regret, and your dignity sizzling. Same energy here. The Sultan approaches the pillar, touches the glass. It's cold, colder than the desert should ever be. The scholar's eyes flick toward him as though still alive, and a tremor runs through the Sultan's spine. He whispers, "What must I do?" But the figure offers no sound, no answer, only a frozen, eternal pointing finger aimed straight at the silver moon. The Sultan looks back up. The throne dissolves, the peasants fade, the smirk evaporates, but the silver light grows sharper, clearer. He feels stripped, like every layer of royal robe peeled away until he's just a man, barefoot and small beneath the cosmos. And then he notices something curious. Around the edges of the silver moon, 7 faint rings glow, outlines of other moons waiting their turn. This is only the first. The dream is pacing itself, like a jinn storyteller dangling the first thread before unravelling the whole tapestry. The Sultan swallows. His mouth tastes of dust, his tongue heavy. He remembers reading once, though he can't recall where, that in some traditions, the moon is not just a light but a judge, recording human deeds. Historians still argue whether early Islamic philosophers meant this metaphorically or literally. But in this moment, metaphor or not, this Sultan feels like he's standing trial under lunar scrutiny. The wind settles, the dunes flatten, the pillar of glass sinks back into the earth, and as silence returns, the silver moon slides away, shrinking back into its place among the others. Behind it, the second moon begins to glow, soft emerald light rippling outward like waves spreading across water. The Sultan's breath catches, his heart still thumping. now beats in rhythm with something new, the hiss of surf, the distant call of gulls. He isn't in the desert anymore. Sand remains under his feet. Yes, but it's damp, and each wave laps gently against his ankles. Emerald light dances on the water, and the moon above reflects itself 1,000 times across the restless ocean. The first lesson has passed, but the second waits, green and beckoning. The ocean rolls in before the Sultan can even blink. One moment he is on damp sand, the next he is waist-deep in waves that shimmer like liquid emerald. Each crest glows with the soft light, as if the moon above has dissolved into the water and decided to swirl itself into every ripple. The Sultan steadies himself, lifting his heavy robes. Though of course in dreams fabric obeys strange rules, it never quite soaks, never quite dries, but still manages to tangle around your knees when you least want it to. He hears gulls wheeling overhead, though he sees no birds. Their cries echo hollowly, like the sound is being piped in from another world. The salt air stings his nose, sharp and clean, a reminder that seas both nourish and swallow. That reminder isn't lost on him. Empires have been built on the backs of sailors, and empires have drowned with them too. Fun fact, historians still argue whether the legendary lost city of Ubar, sometimes called Atlantis of the Sands, was an actual hub of trade swallowed by shifting dunes, or just a cautionary tale whispered by caravan leaders. The Sultan, chest heaving, suddenly wonders if his own kingdom might one day vanish just as neatly, leaving only rumours and fish bones. The second moon glows brighter, casting its emerald reflection so wide it looks like the ocean itself has been painted green. As the waves swell higher, the Sultan feels a gentle tug at his waist. He looks down and sees thin, pale hands, too many of them, brushing against his skin. They belong to figures just below the surface, their hair drifting like seaweed, their eyes luminous, sirens. He remembers the stories, beautiful voices luring sailors to crash their ships on rocks. The sea's own tricksters. One siren rises higher, her face inches from his. She doesn't sing, not yet. Instead, she whispers, her voice like foam fizzing on a tide. "Do you know whose bones hold you up, Sultan?" The question stings. He pretends not to understand, but of course he does. Every palace stone was dragged by hands not his own. Every jewel on his crown was mined by someone who never touched gold except to pass it upward. And the ocean, the sly ocean, has stored the evidence. Fleets that carried his spices, his silks, his ambitions, ships that sometimes never came back. The siren's words remind him that wealth, too, is fragile. He tries to turn away, but another hand brushes his shoulder, tugging gently, almost kindly. A second siren surfaces, hair dark, lips pale. She whispers, "Forgotten dynasties lie below us. Would you like to see?" Before he can answer, the water pulls him down, smooth and inevitable. He should panic, but the emerald glow cushions him, makes it feel less like drowning and more like falling into cool sheets. His ears fill with rushing sound, bubbles rising, then silence, an underwater hush so deep you almost believe you've gone deaf. The seabed unfurls before him like a stage curtain. He sees the wreckage of ships, their masts snapped, their hulls coated in coral, skeletons lie scattered among amphorae, jars that once held oil, wine, or grain, now homes to crabs. He sees crowns dulled by salt, coins etched with faces no one remembers. Forgotten dynasties, indeed. The ocean keeps everything but refuses to give it back. The Sultan drifts over these relics, heart pounding. A strange pride tingles in him, He's not alone in fragility. Even the mightiest have been buried by waves, yet fear laces through that pride. Is this what will happen to his own reign? A palace someday reduced to barnacle-encrusted stone? Historians still argue whether the Phoenicians, masters of seafaring, truly believed the ocean to be a god, or simply treated it as one out of pragmatic fear. The Sultan feels, in this moment, that both were true. A siren swims beside him, pointing toward a statue half buried in silt. The statue's face is cracked, but unmistakably royal, a crown, a carved beard, eyes gazing upward in eternal longing. The Sultan realizes, with a chill, that the face resembles his own. He recoils, bubbles spilling from his mouth. "No," he mutters, though the water swallows his protest. The siren only smiles, her teeth faintly sharp. Every ruler sees himself here. Is it a threat, a prophecy, or just a trick to keep him sinking? He can't decide. That's the thing with dreams. You can never file complaints about unclear messaging. He kicks upward, robes streaming behind him, and the sirens don't stop him. They only laugh, a sound like chimes drag through deep water. Their laughter follows him until, with a gasp, he bursts through the emerald waves. Now he is no longer drowning. He finds himself standing on the deck of a ship, timber dark and glistening, sails taut with green moonlight. The crew scurries silently, faces hidden, shadows more than men. He grips the railing, steadying himself as the ship cuts through emerald waters with unnatural speed. For a fleeting moment, the Sultan feels exhilaration, wind in his hair, salt spray on his lips. This is what freedom must taste like. He recalls, strangely, that medieval explorers often carried preserved lemons to prevent scurvy, though historians still argue when exactly sailors discovered the fruit's medicinal power. The Sultan chuckles. Here he is, ruler of landlocked palaces, suddenly daydreaming about limes. Dreams really know how to mess with priorities, but the joy fades quickly. Ahead, through the green mist, the Sultan sees shapes rising, towers half submerged, a city sinkened by degrees. Stone arches droop into the water, minarets bend, leaning like drunkards. From balconies, ghostly figures wave torches, not in greeting but in warning. The entire city is vanishing into the tide, swallowed whole. The Sultan grips the railing tighter. The silver moon taught him fragility of power. This emerald moon shows him fragility of wealth. He watches the city tilt, crumble, vanish beneath emerald waves, and he feels his own palace trembling somewhere in the back of his mind. The ship tilts. The deck slides. He braces. And suddenly, he's back on damp sand. The ocean is gone, drained in an instant, leaving him gasping in silence. Only the emerald moon remains, glowing above, as if amused by his panic. Then, slowly, its light dims, shrinking back into the heavens. Behind it, the third moon ignites burning gold, fierce and sharp as desert sun. The Sultan shivers. One trial flows into the next, and the dream refuses to let him rest. The golden blaze swallows everything. Sand stretches again beneath your feet. But this is no cool midnight desert. This is the kind that scorches your souls and blinds your eyes with glare. The third moon, burning gold, hangs overhead like a coin fresh from a forge. Its light doesn't soothe, it stings. You squint, just as the Sultan does. Though dream heat has no mercy, the desert rolls in waves of dunes, higher than city walls, sharper than palace steps. The Sultan pulls his robes close, but they do little to block the blaze. Sweat beads on his forehead, trickling down into his beard. He tastes salt, and here comes the irony. He just escaped drowning in the Emerald Sea, and now he's about to parch like a raisin under the desert sun. If dreams have a sense of humour, it's cruel. The golden moon brightens and shapes rise on the horizon. Camels first, their shadows stretched long across the sand. Then caravans appear, lines of merchants plodding steadily, bells jangling on saddles, the scent of dates and spices clinging to the air. The Sultan watches them approach, their goods piled high, silks folded into crates, jars of saffron sealed with wax, gold ingots hidden under coarse cloth. For a fleeting moment he feels relief. Merchants mean trade, and trade means prosperity. He has built much of his reign on caravans like these, after all. The Silk Road pulsed with life in his day. Caravans carrying not just goods but stories, rumours, plagues. Historians still argue whether the Black Death travelled primarily by sea or land, but either way, trade was the bloodstream that carried both wealth and ruin. The Sultan remembers this too well. The first merchant bows as the caravan halts. His face is cracked from sun, his beard dusty, but his eyes glint like coins. "O Sultan," he says, "see what we bring, riches from distant lands, treasures to line your coffers." Another steps forward, spreading a cloth that glitters with gems, rubies like droplets of blood, emeralds deeper than seas, diamonds sparking as if holding trapped starlight. The Sultan's hand twitches, aching to touch them, but then his stomach knots. He notices the men carrying these loads stagger under the weight. One collapses outright, face first into the sand. The others don't pause. They step over him, focused only on reaching the Sultan's feet with their gifts. The gold moon above flashes, mocking. The Sultan feels the joke bite deep. Endless wealth, endless cost. He looks back at the collapsed man, but no one tends him. Wealth never pauses for breath. And then the desert shifts. He blinks, and suddenly he's not standing before a caravan but in the middle of a bustling marketplace. Stalls burst with colour, traders shouting prices, camels braying, chickens fluttering loose. The Sultan knows this place. It could be Damascus, Cairo, Baghdad. It could be any city where spices burn your nose and coins clink like water. He wanders the stalls. Merchants thrust items at him. Silk woven so fine it could slip through a ring. Glass blown into shapes thinner than breath. Peppercorns piled like treasure. One man laughs. They say pepper is worth its weight in gold. The Sultan smiles faintly. Fun fact, in medieval Europe, pepper actually was used like currency. People called it black gold. But just as he lifts a handful, the scene warps again. The pepper in his palm bleeds into sand. The stalls collapse, and the bustling crowd fades. He is back in the desert, alone, save for one figure trudging toward him. This figure is massive, cloaked in dust. Chains clink at its wrists. As it nears, the Sultan sees that its body is built not of flesh but of coins, bars of gold, jewels crammed together. Its head is a gleaming crown, its eyes hollow sockets. The wealth golem, a nightmare, but also a truth. It opens its mouth, and the sound is grinding metal. "Did you think wealth was yours, Sultan? I am the one who owns you." The Sultan stumbles back, sand sliding beneath his heels. He wants to deny it, but the memory flashes, endless debates over taxation, vaults that never seemed full, a hunger for expansion because prosperity always demanded more. More! More! Rulers never admit it aloud. But they are servants to their own gold. Historians still argue whether the Abbasid caliphs bankrupted themselves on palaces or whether their treasuries were bottomless. But either way, they were chained to wealth's demands. The Sultan, heart-hammering, realizes he is no different. The wealth golem raises a fist. Sandstorms rise in answer, swirling around him, golden dust scratching the Sultan's skin. He coughs, choking. The dunes twist upward, forming into walls, cages, traps. He is penned in, prisoner of sand and coin, and then, through the storm, he hears laughter, faint, ringing, a jester's laugh again, the same from the silver moon, a cruel callback, reminding him, even the moon mocks your riches. The Sultan drops to his knees, sand biting his skin. What must I do? He shouts, voice lost in the roar. But the wealth golem only crumbles, collapsing back into coins that scatter, vanish, dissolve into nothing. The desert empties once more, as if mocking him for clutching at illusions. When the silence returns, the Sultan is trembling. The third moon hovers above, still blazing gold, but slowly its shine fades. Another disk brightens behind it. The fourth, iron grey, shadowed and sharp-edged. The Sultan feels a chill despite the desert's heat. If gold revealed his wealth's chains, iron will show him conquest's weight. The desert heat drops so suddenly it makes your skin prickle. One blink ago, the third moon blazed gold like a furnace. Now its light shrinks away, leaving only the looming glow of the fourth, an iron-grey disk, heavy, cold, and sharp-edged. The air itself thickens, metallic in your lungs, as if you've inhaled the taste of a forge. The Sultan shudders. He knows this feeling. It is the breath of war. Beneath his feet, the sand rattles. At first, it seems like the rumble of thunder, but then the ground cracks, splitting into dark seams. From those seams rise soldiers, not men, not quite, but bodies cast from iron. Their limbs move with the creak of hinges, their faces hammered blank. Swords sprout directly from their hands, shields moulded into their arms. They march in perfect rhythm, sand shivering with each step. The Sultan watches them form a vast line across the dunes. He has commanded armies before, seen the glint of steel under the sun. But this is conquest stripped bare of flesh and bone, reduced to machinery. Iron doesn't eat, doesn't bleed, doesn't hesitate. You don't need a war chest for these soldiers, just ore, fire, and ambition. He tries to speak, but his throat feels tight. The soldiers halt as one, then lift their swords skyward. The sound is a clang that echoes in his chest, and for a moment, he wonders if this is how his enemies saw him, as relentless, faceless, unstoppable. Not a man, but an iron machine. Historians still argue whether medieval rulers truly saw war as divine duty, or merely as economics wrapped in banners. Holy war, crusade, jihad, labels that dressed up ambition with piety. The Sultan knows, with grim honesty, that for him war was sometimes sacred, but often profitable. Land to tax, prisoners to ransom, silk routes to seize. This grey moon, with its army of forged men, doesn't let him pretend otherwise. The soldiers begin to march again, trampling dunes flat. Wherever their feet fall, the sand darkens, turning into iron plates that spread outward, swallowing the desert. The Sultan steps back, nearly stumbling. His robe snags on a jagged plate. sparks snapping as fabric tears. He yanks free, heart pounding, realizing how quickly conquest consumes the land. You gain a fortress here, a province there, but soon enough, the map is less silk and more steel. A voice rises, booming from nowhere, heavy as hammer on anvil. Did you think conquest ends? It feeds itself. Iron hungers. Sultan. The Sultan whirls, searching for the source. On the horizon, he sees a throne wrought from blackened iron, too massive to sit. Chains stretch from it into the sky, tethering the grey moon above. The symbolism is clear, though his dream does him no favours by sugarcoating it. Conquest builds a throne too heavy for anyone to bear. He approaches cautiously. Around the throne lie helmets cracked, spears broken, banners tattered. He recognizes some, standards of kingdoms he has fought, banners of allies who died at his side. Their colours are dust now, grey on grey, and in their midst, skeletons of horses, ribs gleaming white, skulls cracked. Even animals became tools of iron's hunger. A strange figure stirs atop the throne, not a man, not a djinn. A mask of hammered iron hides its face, and from its chest protrudes a broken sword, still glowing faintly red. It speaks without moving its lips. Iron forgets the living, only conquest remains. The Sultan swallows. He thinks of his own campaigns, sieges where food ran out, fields burned, families displaced. He remembers victories sung by poets, but also the smell of charred earth clinging to his boots. He had told himself conquest was necessary, that stability demanded expansion, but the moon reminds him stability never comes. Iron only asks for more iron. You know that feeling when you try to fix one leaky pipe in your house, and suddenly 5 more start dripping? Conquest is like that, but with cities. The Sultan whispers, "But my people, they needed protection. I fought for them." The iron figure tilts its head, sword scraping against the throne. Protection or dominion? Historians still argue whether rulers fight for defense or desire. You tell yourself one while serving the other. The accusation cuts deeper than any blade. He drops to his knees, sand-turned steel biting into his skin. His hands tremble. He feels the weight of every order he gave, every march, every trumpet blast that sent men into the fray. Around him, the iron soldiers freeze, then crumble. They fall like statues struck by earthquakes, shattering into piles of rust. The clang echoes, a sound of endings. Rust spreads outward, eating at the steel plates that had devoured the desert. Bit by bit the dunes return, though scarred, lined with fragments of iron. The dream is merciful, but not entirely. Scars always remain. The grey moon flickers once, then dims, sliding back into the heavens. The Sultan exhales, chest raw, mind heavy. He feels aged, as though every battle has pressed another wrinkle into his soul. But before he can rest, the 5th moon flares. Crimson light floods the desert, storm clouds boiling above, rain already spattering hot on the sand. The Sultan lifts his face, and the taste of iron lingers, replaced now by the taste of blood. The palace of Sultan Jalal grows quieter as you step into the echoing chamber of mirrors, a place meant to reflect glory, but tonight reflecting only the deep exhaustion written across your face. The 7 moons prophecy weighs on you more heavily with every passing night. Courtiers whisper when they think you cannot hear, and scribes scurry like startled mice with each new edict you issue. You feel the air heavy with expectation, as if the entire empire holds its breath, waiting for your next move. One of your advisors, a scholar with more scrolls than friends, tells you that such visions of moons often appear in Persian epics. He mentions that the poet Ferdowsi, author of the Shahnameh, filled his pages with celestial omens guiding kings and warriors alike. It's an impressive detail, but he says it while spilling ink down his robe, which makes you wonder if he should maybe spend more time learning how not to stain himself and less time lecturing. Still, he reminds you that rulers have always interpreted the heavens as messages, sometimes warnings, sometimes promises. Historians still argue whether rulers genuinely believed in such omens or cleverly used them as political tools to justify decisions. The court astrologers argue loudly among themselves. One says the moons represent 7 enemies gathering to topple your throne. Another insists they are 7 opportunities, bright paths meant to lead your reign toward prosperity. A third simply shrugs and mutters that perhaps you should sleep with fewer pillows, since dreams often tangle with poor posture. You almost laugh at that one. Almost. The Sultanate needs stability, not riddles. So, in an act of weary defiance, you order a series of public festivals to mask the tension. Trumpets blare, torches flare, and food is handed out on wide platters that wobble in the servants' hands. The people cheer, distracted by roasted lamb and sweet halva, but the moons return to you in dreams the moment the music fades. It is as though the heavens laugh at your attempts to ignore them. And then comes the night of the lion hunt. You ride out beyond the city walls, clad in armour that clinks with each movement. The desert wind presses against your face, carrying the smell of sand and sweat. Lions were once symbols of kingship in Mesopotamian art, painted in triumphal scenes where rulers struck them down to prove strength. You tell yourself you will show the same mastery. The hunt, however, takes an unexpected turn. The lion, massive and golden-eyed, does not flee, it charges. Your horse rears, and the world tilts. Suddenly, there is dust, heat, and the shocking weight of the beast pinning you. Its teeth flash close enough that you smell the iron tang of its breath. You are sure this is the end. The 7 moons, it seems, have chosen their first strike, but then an arrow whistles, striking true. Your guards pull the lion away, their shouts ringing in your ears. You stagger upright, trembling but alive. The lion lies slain, its mane spreading across the ground like a halo of sunlit fire. The crowd of attendants cheer, but you notice something unsettling. In the lion's amber eyes, as the last light fades, you swear you see 7 pale reflections of the moon. Not 1, not 2, all 7. You tell no one. Some truths weigh too heavily to share. Back in the palace, you spend the night staring at polished bronze shields, trying to glimpse whether the moons will return. Sleep finally takes you, and yes, they are there again, this time circling closer, as though mocking your survival. Historians might still argue whether dreams shape reality, or whether reality bleeds into dreams. You don't have the luxury of academic debates. You just know that your reign has crossed into dangerous territory, where symbols begin to walk alongside fact, and fear is as tangible as any blade. You awake with dawn breaking across the city domes, the sound of vendors hawking figs below your window, but the air feels thinner, as though the walls themselves now carry secrets. The 7 moons are not done with you, and you, whether ready or not, are not done with them. The desert wind brings little comfort when it carries only omens. You stand at the palace balcony, gazing at the horizon where the dawn light cracks open the sky like a clay lamp spilling fire. Below, The city wakes, merchants setting out carpets, water sellers shouting prices, children chasing each other through dust-choked alleys. To them, the world is simple: trade, laughter, hunger, survival. But to you, Sultan Jalal, each sunrise feels heavy with celestial riddles. The 7 moons linger like a whispered warning no counsel, no feast, no hunt can silence. Your scholars continue their debates in chambers scented with old parchment and mildew. One insists the 7 moons echo the Pleiades, those bright sisters watched by ancient astronomers. Another claims they resemble the lunar eclipses chronicled in Babylonian tablets, often read as harbingers of empire-shaking change. A third mutters that moons, in certain Persian miniatures, appear doubled or multiplied to signify both blessing and curse. They drown each other out, arguing until their beards bristle like cats in quarrel. You leave them to their noise. Instead, you summon your court historian, a cautious man with ink-stained fingers and eyes that rarely rise from the ground. He tells you of rulers undone not by swords, but by symbols, by ignoring portents when the people clung to them. He recounts how Roman generals would delay entire campaigns if birds flew in the wrong direction, and how Chinese emperors recorded eclipses as judgments from heaven. Symbols matter because people believe them, he whispers, as though afraid the walls themselves are listening. The thought gnaws at you. The 7 moons are not just your burden, they are spreading like wildfire in rumour. Traders speak of them in the bazaar, claiming they foretell famine. Servants whisper that they signal betrayal in the palace. Mothers hush children with the tale that the moons demand a sacrifice. Though what kind? No one agrees. You feel control slipping like sand through open fingers. So you turn to ritual. At the city's grand mosque, incense coils upward into a dome painted with stars, and you kneel beneath verses etched in lapis and gold. The imam chants prayers, but you notice his voice tremble slightly, as though even his faith bends beneath the weight of your vision. You give alms, you order fresh wells dug, you fund new schools, all gestures of piety and generosity, hoping to turn the moons into symbols of blessing rather than doom. For a brief time, the city softens. Bells of laughter ring at the markets. Drums beat during weddings, but always, at night, the moons return. One evening, weary and restless, you wander the hidden gardens behind the palace, where fountains murmur among marble lions and vines curl against cool stone. There, you encounter a figure cloaked not in silk but in travel dust, a mystic who had walked weeks through desert paths to reach your court. His face is lined, his beard wild, and his eyes shine with unsettling clarity. He does not bow deeply, but instead greets you with the calm of one who answers to no crown. "You dream of 7 moons," he says before you can speak, and you wonder whether they promise crown or coffin. His voice cuts sharper than any blade. You demand to know how he learned this. He only smiles. Mystics have their ways, through rumour, through whispers, through visions of their own. He tells you the moons are not merely signs but choices. Each one marks a different path: conquest, betrayal, wisdom, sacrifice, exile, rebirth, or ruin. Which moon shines brightest depends not on fate but on you. The idea unsettles you more than any prophecy. If destiny rests not in the stars but in your decisions, then failure cannot be blamed on heaven. It would be yours alone. Before you can press him further, the mystic is gone, vanished among shadows, leaving only the scent of frankincense and dust behind. You search the gardens, but find no trace. Guards insist no such man entered the palace. Yet you know what you heard. His words echo even as you try to sleep. That night, the dream changes. The 7 moons draw nearer, vast and glowing, until they hang like silver lanterns just above your head. They hum, almost sing, a chorus without words, and you reach toward them. But the closer your hand moves, the faster they flicker, until you wake with sweat pouring down your brow and a question burning in your chest. Which path belongs to you? History, centuries later, may argue whether the 7 moons were real visions, clever political theatre, or the fever of a weary ruler under too much weight. But for you, Sultan Jalal, there is no distance, no scholarly debate. There is only the quiet knowledge that each day you rule. The moons drift nearer, and the empire watches, holding its breath. The 7th moon has long since faded back into its celestial cradle, but the image of its pale shimmer still clings to your vision like the afterglow of a candle. You blink into the palace's dark chamber, half waking, half hovering between dream and echo. The Sultan's dream has been whispered into your bones for so long now that you almost forget you weren't there yourself, wandering under those moons, listening to their voices. Yet tonight, the dream doesn't release you back into the comfortable certainty of routine. Instead, it leaves behind a riddle, like a pebble dropped into still water, rippling outwards with every thought. The court astrologers are summoned, their robes dragging across marble tiles, their eyes red from sleepless nights. They unfurl scrolls that smell of smoke and ink, papers etched with ancient diagrams of stars and circles. 7 moons, one mutters, tracing the curve of his palm over a chart, is a sign of balance. Another shakes his head and insists it is not balance at all but warning, something fractured in the heavens, mirrored upon earth. Historians still argue whether these astrologers were true scientists of their time, or simply performers with a knack for weaving poetry into fear. Either way, their words cling. You watch the Sultan frown, restless. He wants certainty, but certainty is like sand slipping through your fingers. Scholars remind him that across history, rulers have always sought the stars for guidance. Remember Caesar and the comet that burned across Rome's sky? Or Alexander consulting oracles in dim caves lit by fire? Great men have leaned heavily on these riddles, sometimes winning battles, sometimes losing their crowns. Yet here, in this palace, the Sultan's fate is tangled with moons, not comets, not caves. A curious fringe detail emerges in their mutterings. Some astrologers claim that the 7 moons are not moons at all but mirrors, reflections of the Sultan's own soul scattered across the heavens. The palace scribes chuckle behind their sleeves at such mystical nonsense. But the idea lingers. Imagine having your inner life so vast and complicated that the sky itself decides to scatter pieces of you around just to make sense of it. You can't help but wonder what your own reflection might look like up there. Probably a messy moon still wearing socks from 3 weeks ago. As night folds over night, you follow the Sultan's footsteps into the palace gardens. He walks under a canopy of jasmine, the air sweet enough to make you dizzy. The fountains glimmer with lantern light, and the sound of water seems to echo the murmurs of the astrologers. You trail close behind, and it's here he whispers something, more to himself than anyone else. What if the moons ask for something in return? That thought hangs heavy. Prophecies are never free. The days that follow are restless. The Sultan orders the gathering of storytellers, poets, and travellers from across the kingdom. If the stars cannot explain his dream, Perhaps voices from distant lands might. You sit among the crowd as the air fills with tales. A sailor from China speaks of tides pulled by twin moons. A desert wanderer recalls mirages that shimmer like silver discs above the dunes. An elderly woman recounts an old lullaby about a boy who trapped 7 moons in jars, only to release them when he realized their light belonged to all. These stories paint the Sultan's dream in colours that no scroll or chart could hold. You begin to see the richness of human imagination, how dreams become mirrors of fears, hopes, and jokes. Yes, jokes. One jester, with bells jangling at his ankles, declares that the 7th moon simply left because it got tired of babysitting the other 6. The court bursts into laughter, and for a moment the Sultan smiles. Even the most serious of visions sometimes needs a touch of absurdity, and still, debates unravel like endless threads. Historians still argue whether this moment, this obsession with the Sultan's dream, sparked the later flourishing of literature within his court, or whether it was just another distraction for a man too afraid of mortality. What cannot be denied is that the riddle of the 7 moons created a space where every voice, from the learned scholar to the wandering fool, carried weight, and you, drowsy listener, are caught in that space now, drifting along with their murmurs, floating like a lantern on a night breeze. Morning light streams through lattice windows, painting the marble floors of the Sultan's chamber in patterns of gold. You stir awake, though it feels as if you've never truly left the dream. The riddle of the 7 moons still clings to you, whispering softly at the edges of thought. The Sultan, too, is restless. He has sat through astrologers' charts, endured storytellers' wild imaginings, and even laughed at a jester's playful nonsense. Yet none of it satisfies the growing ache inside him. Dreams, you realize, are not puzzles to be solved with a single answer. They are questions that multiply. So he turns to the philosophers. They arrive with long beards and longer arguments, robes smelling faintly of ink and dust. They bow before the Sultan and take their seats, immediately falling into quarrelsome chatter. One insists the moons are metaphors for knowledge, scattered so no man may ever hold them all. Another argues that they represent time itself, each moon a stage of life, from birth's tender glow to death's waning shadow. A younger philosopher, bolder than the rest, claims the moons are illusions, proof that even the Sultan's eyes can be tricked, and therefore nothing is ever certain. The chamber hums with their words, heavy as incense. You almost expect the walls themselves to sigh in exasperation. And here's the strange part. History often remembers philosophers as solemn men, but in truth they could be rather absurd. One scholar spends an entire afternoon drawing circles on parchment, convinced he will discover the geometry of dreams. Another argues so passionately that the moons must be onions, layers upon layers waiting to be peeled, that the court cooks have to hide their baskets of vegetables to stop the teasing. It is difficult to know whether the Sultan was amused or simply exhausted by such antics, but records suggest he listened patiently, his eyes shadowed by a hunger for something more. You sit among the courtiers, drowsy, lulled by the rhythm of debate. Philosophers tend to circle the same thought again and again, like pigeons chasing crumbs in the square. Yet, as you drift in and out of their words, something curious happens. You begin to sense that the Sultan is not searching for meaning in the moons at all, but in himself. Perhaps the dream was never about the heavens, but about the man who dreamed it. That thought lingers as the palace quiets. The debates fade, replaced by the softer sounds of evening, crickets in the gardens, water trickling in the fountains, servants whispering as they light the oil lamps. You wander the courtyard alone, gazing up at the real sky. The moon tonight is singular, round, serene. No sevenfold visions, no strange reflections, just one calm silver eye watching the world. And yet, in its stillness, you sense the truth. Even a single moon can carry countless meanings, depending on the dreamer. Later, as you lie down on the soft cushions of your chamber, you feel the weight of history folding over you. For centuries, men and women have puzzled over signs, comets, eclipses, stars that burn too bright. Some saw omens of war, others saw promises of love. And here you are, a guest in a dream that has wandered across centuries, carried on the breath of storytellers. Perhaps you, too, will carry it further. Your eyelids grow heavy. You think of the philosophers still muttering in the halls, their arguments circling like moths around a lamp. You think of the Sultan, walking his garden under jasmine and starlight, waiting for the moons to speak again. And you think of yourself, lying here now, listening, drifting, letting the dream seep into your bones. Close your eyes. Let the riddle be. Not every mystery is meant to be solved tonight. Instead, let it cradle you, as gentle and vast as the night sky. Breathe slowly, sink deeper, and let the 7 moons watch over your sleep, even if you see only one in the sky above. By the next morning, the Sultan is restless again. Sleep had come to him like a thief in the night, quick, uneasy, and without satisfaction. He rises before dawn, pacing his chambers as the muezzin's call drifts faintly over the city. His attendants find him staring out toward the horizon, where the faintest curve of the moon still lingers like a ghost. He mutters that the dream is not finished, that it is speaking to him still, and so he does what rulers often do when confronted with mystery. He sends for more voices. This time, he summons the mystics, not the polished philosophers with their ink-stained fingers, nor the astrologers with their brass compasses, but the wandering dervishes and desert ascetics who live closer to silence than to speech. They arrive barefoot, wrapped in plain wool, their eyes shining with the kind of calm that makes courtiers nervous. Unlike the scholars, they do not argue. They listen. They breathe. They let the Sultan's words hang in the air like smoke, waiting for the wind to decide where they will drift. One mystic tells him softly, "The 7 moons are 7 mirrors, each one showing you not the heavens, but yourself. Seek not above, Sultan, but within." Another whispers that the moons are stations of the soul, a journey of purification where each phase strips away one veil of the self until only truth remains. Yet another simply smiles and says nothing at all, as if silence itself were the answer. And this silence is contagious. The court, accustomed to chatter and debate, falls strangely still. Even you feel it. The great marble chamber, so often echoing with voices, now seems filled with something deeper than words. You shift uneasily, as though listening for a sound you cannot hear. But here is where history turns strange again. The Sultan, this man of authority, armies, and endless wealth, leans forward like a child before a story, drinking in every riddle, every whisper of the mystics. He is not seeking power this time, nor glory, nor prophecy. He is seeking peace. Perhaps that is what the dream meant all along, that even a king may be haunted by questions no crown can answer. The chronicles tell us little about what he felt that day, but you can imagine it. A ruler who commanded the world, humbled by the mysteries of his own mind, a man of palaces and power who suddenly yearned for the simplicity of the desert wind, the clarity of moonlight on still water, and perhaps you feel it too, here in this telling. For haven't you, at times, longed for answers that never came? Haven't you looked up at the night sky and wondered if the light above was a message meant for you? The Sultan does not sleep well that night, but it is a different kind of unrest, no longer frantic, no longer desperate, but quiet, like a man sitting at the edge of a garden, waiting for dawn. He sees the single moon again, shining in its usual place. Yet now it does not mock him with riddles. It seems to smile, as though reminding him that the dream is not an answer to be won, but a journey to be walked, and so you, too, begin to drift. The words of the mystics linger in your mind, circling like soft doves. Seek not above, but within. Each moon is a mirror. Silence is its own answer. Their voices become your lullaby. The vast halls of the palace blur. The marble pillars soften. The glow of the lamps dissolves into starlight. You close your eyes, and the 7 moons return, not as a riddle this time, but as gentle lights floating above you. They do not demand meaning. They do not trouble you with questions. They simply shine, steady and calm, as if keeping watch while you rest. Breathe deeply. Let the desert night wrap itself around you. Whatever mysteries remain will keep until tomorrow. For now, there is only stillness, only silence, only the quiet silver glow of a dream carrying you into sleep. The following days pass like ripples on water. The Sultan, though still restless, grows quieter. His temper, once a flame that threatened to scorch all who came near, softens into something more like smoke, still present, still uneasy, but less dangerous. His court takes note of this change, though none dare speak of it directly. For what ruler wishes to be reminded that a dream has unsettled him more than any enemy, and yet he cannot resist returning again and again to the dream. He speaks of it over morning meals, toying with dates and honey without appetite. He asks his scribes to record the words of the mystics, though they write in hesitant strokes, unsure whether these fragments are revelation or folly. Soon, however, the Sultan makes a curious decision. He declares that he will leave the palace, not for war, not for conquest, but for pilgrimage. Imagine it, a man whose footsteps once shook the earth with armies, now stepping out into the desert with only a few attendants, seeking something he cannot name. You walk with him, in imagination if not in flesh. The city fades behind you. Its domes and minarets sink into the horizon like ships at sea. Ahead stretches the desert, vast and endless, the kind of silence that swallows sound whole. Day after day, the Sultan rides beneath the sun, and at night he sleeps beneath the stars, hoping the dream will return. But it does not. Night after night, he sees only the ordinary moon, round and solitary, casting its patient glow upon the dunes. Some might say this was cruelty, that the heavens lured him with a riddle, then abandoned him. But perhaps it was mercy, for in that long silence something begins to shift. The Sultan starts to notice the things he once overlooked, the way the wind carves patterns in the sand, like writing no one can read, the way a single drop of water, cool and clear, feels like treasure beyond gold, the way stars wheel overhead in quiet procession, each one burning with a steadiness that mocks the fury of men. One evening, as the caravan rests, he sits apart from his attendants. The desert is wide around him, the sky immense, and it is then that the dream finally returns, not in sleep, but in waking. He does not see 7 moons blazing above. Instead, he sees their reflection in his mind's eye. 7 lights, calm and serene, not hovering in the heavens but shining within his chest. He understands, at last, what the mystics meant. The moons are not a prophecy of conquest. They are not a warning of doom. They are stations of the soul, steps along the inner path. The Sultan, who once sought answers outside himself, in scholars, in mystics, in armies, now feels them blooming in silence. For perhaps the greatest science of all is this, the science of knowing one's own heart. He breathes deeply, and for the first time in weeks, perhaps years, he feels peace. The desert wind moves gently, lifting the edge of his cloak, carrying away the weight of crowns and councils. The sands do not whisper riddles, they simply exist, vast and eternal, and he is content to exist with them. And you too, feel this calm. You are no longer in the palace, no longer among restless courtiers and fearful advisers. You're in the open desert, beneath an ocean of stars. The sand is cool beneath your feet, the night air is crisp, the single moon shines softly above, no longer a riddle but a companion, and somewhere within you, 7 quiet lights glow, steady and warm. Your body begins to sink into this peace, as though the desert itself were cradling you. Your breathing slows, your mind, once full of questions, softens into silence. The Sultan's journey becomes your own, not to conquer, not to solve, but simply to rest in the mystery, and so you let go. The dream no longer demands an answer. It is enough to feel its light, within and without. The moons drift gently across your thoughts, like lanterns floating on still water, until at last they fade into the quiet rhythm of sleep. Rest now. The desert will keep its secrets. The stars will keep their watch, and the moons, whether 1 or 7, or none at all, will guide you softly into dreams. The Sultan's return from the desert is not marked by triumph, nor by the loud processions that once greeted his victories. There are no trumpets, no carpets unfurled across the palace steps. Instead, he arrives quietly, his face leaner, his gaze gentler, his voice softer. Those who see him murmur among themselves, for though he looks the same, something invisible has changed. He no longer carries himself like a man burdened by riddles. He walks like one who has set down a heavy load. The palace, with its jewelled walls and echoing halls, feels strangely smaller to him now. Where once he took pride in its splendour, he now notices the silence between its stones. He hears the scuff of sandals on marble, the rustle of silk curtains, the faint dripping of water from a fountain in the courtyard. All these small sounds, once drowned in noise, now seem alive, full of meaning. He does not summon his scribes to record more interpretations. He does not demand more words from his mystics. Instead, he sits often in the garden, there, among the jasmine and roses. He closes his eyes and listens, not for voices from beyond, but for the steady rhythm of his own breath. And as days pass, his people notice something. The Sultan no longer rules with a fist clenched in suspicion. He rules with a hand open in patience. Punishments soften into pardons. Arguments among courtiers are met not with rage, but with silence that makes them think twice about their quarrels. He speaks less, but when he does, his words fall like drops of water on parched ground. One evening, when the moon is high, he gathers his closest attendants. He tells them the dream will remain as it is, a mystery, unbroken, unforced. Some truths, he says, are not meant to be caged by speech. His voice is calm, carrying no trace of the old fire, only the gentle glow of someone who has learned to live in peace with not knowing. And you, listening, begin to understand. Not every dream needs to be solved. Not every question demands an answer. Sometimes, the greatest wisdom lies in allowing the mystery to remain, like a pearl hidden in the depths of the sea, beautiful simply because it is unseen. This realization settles over you like a warm cloak. The story slows, its edges softening, its weight lifting. You feel your body sinking deeper into rest, as though reclining in a garden yourself, lulled by the faint fragrance of roses in the night air. The moon above, silent and steady, seems to gaze at you with the same patience that guided the Sultan. Your thoughts grow quiet. The world grows soft. And though the story continues, you drift nearer and nearer to sleep, guided by the calm of a dream that needs no ending. The Sultan now moves through his days with a serenity that is almost contagious. The palace corridors, once echoing with tension and the shuffle of urgent feet, now carry the quiet murmur of life unfolding without fear. Servants move calmly. Merchants find their orders taken with a patient smile, and even the guards pace with lighter steps. The city itself seems to breathe easier, as though sensing the subtle shift in the heart of its ruler. He spends mornings in the library, poring over texts that once seemed dull and rigid. Historians still argue whether rulers read for knowledge or for the illusion of it. But the Sultan reads because the words speak to him now, not because they command him. He traces his fingers over the pages of illuminated manuscripts, absorbing stories of kings and sages, battles won and lost, cities built and abandoned, all without the urgent need to act. He finds the tales themselves are a kind of moonlight, reflecting lessons without forcing conclusions. At midday, he strolls the gardens, listening to the water from fountains and the soft wind rustling the leaves. He remembers the mystic's words, that the moons are mirrors of the self, that the journey is internal, not external. He finds that their wisdom resonates, like the faint hum of a stringed instrument left vibrating in an empty hall, and, occasionally, he chuckles quietly to himself, recalling the jester who once insisted the seventh moon had gone off to find a nap. Even in absurdity there is comfort. At night, he climbs to the palace rooftop and looks out over the city. The people below move about their lives, unaware of the cosmic dance that once haunted their sultan. The stars overhead are countless, yet the single moon shines calmly, its reflection steady in the river that winds through the city. The Sultan inhales the cool night air and feels the tension of his earlier visions dissolving. He begins to understand the quiet magic in ordinary acts, the sharing of bread, the exchange of laughter, the simple turning of a page. Even conquest, once a relentless pursuit, now seems a fleeting shadow against the weight of lived moments. He recalls the iron soldiers of the grey moon, the banners flattened into dust, and realizes that real strength lies not in domination, but in restraint and understanding. You, listening in the soft hush of your own space, feel the lull of this realization. Sleep creeps closer, unhurried, gentle, inevitable. The Sultan's journey, with its moons and omens, is now yours to carry lightly in the mind, like the memory of a lullaby that hums itself quietly as the night deepens. Each lesson, each dream, each whisper of the desert folds into your consciousness, guiding you into rest. And so, the palace grows still, the fountains murmur softly, and the moon keeps its patient watch. a silent companion for both ruler and dreamer alike. You feel your breath slow, your body settle, the world contracting into a safe, warm space of quiet reflection. Time passes differently in the Sultan's palace now. Days stretch like golden silk, slow and deliberate, and nights arrive soft and unhurried. The 7 moons no longer haunt his dreams, nor do they glare with judgment from the heavens. Instead, their echoes have settled quietly within him, like gentle lanterns illuminating corners of his mind that were once shadowed by fear and ambition. You watch him move through his halls, greeting ministers and children alike with warmth rather than command. The weight of prophecy transformed into calm awareness. He spends hours walking the palace gardens, letting the scent of jasmine and rose mingle with the cool breeze. The fountain's gentle splashes become a rhythm that guides his thoughts, a metronome for patience and reflection. He observes the lives of his people without the urgency to manipulate or control, understanding that the subtle threads of daily life are often more potent than the grand gestures of power. You almost forget the Sultan you knew, a man obsessed with omens and conquest, and instead see someone who has discovered the quiet strength in listening, in stillness. One afternoon, a messenger brings word of distant lands, of treaties and alliances, of disputes long simmering. In the past, such news might have sent him into fevered councils or restless night rides across dunes. Now, he receives the information, considers it carefully, and acts, not with rashness, but with deliberate thought, allowing wisdom and compassion to guide his choices. Historians still argue whether rulers can ever truly change, whether lessons learned in dreams can survive the demands of reality. But you can see the evidence unfolding, subtle as sunlight on water. As night falls, the Sultan climbs to the roof once more. The single moon hangs above, its light spilling across the marble courtyard like silver dust. He tilts his face toward it, not seeking answers, not demanding revelation, but simply appreciating its calm presence. Perhaps the 7 moons will return one day, or perhaps they have served their purpose already. In either case, the Sultan has learned that the journey is more important than the destination, that dreams can guide but need not control, and that even the weightiest omens can become gentle companions when approached with patience. And now, you as listening, begin to feel the same ease settle over your own senses. The story winds down, each breath slower, each thought quieter. The world contracts into the soft warmth of bed, blankets curling around you like protective wings. The Sultan's journey, with its moons, dreams, and reflections, becomes your own, a meditation, a lullaby, a gentle reminder that calm can be found even in the midst of mystery. Breathe in, breathe out. Let the story fade like the last glimmer of moonlight across a quiet courtyard. Allow yourself to drift, guided by the soft glow of unseen moons, into the gentle arms of sleep. The palace grows silent. The fountains whisper their steady song, and the night wraps its cool arms around every marble column, every garden path, every quiet corner of the city. You lie down, feeling the mattress and pillows embrace you, the weight of the day dissolving. Your breathing slows, deepens, following a rhythm older than any palace, older than empires. Even your heartbeat seems to soften, syncing with the slow pulse of a world that has long outlasted kings and courts. Imagine the desert beyond the palace walls, stretching endlessly under the starlit sky. Each grain of sand holds centuries of wind, countless footsteps, stories forgotten but still present, whispering softly to the patient traveller. Above, the moon watches, serene and untroubled, offering light not to judge but simply to exist. Let yourself drift alongside it, floating in quiet, letting every thought that once pressed against your mind now dissolve like morning mist. You may feel the echoes of the 7 moons, visions of silver light, reflections of courage, wisdom, and patience. But they are gentle now, guardians of calm rather than omens of unrest. Each moon folds into the next, blending into a tapestry of peace that stretches through your mind and body, letting tension slip away. Slowly, you sink deeper, the world fading into soft shadows. You feel held, cradled, carried into the stillness of night. No question demands an answer. No mystery forces you awake. The Sultan's journey ends here, and so does yours tonight. Rest, and let the quiet light of the moons guide your dreams, steady and gentle until morning arrives.